The glow of the phone screen cut through the darkness like a blade. 3 words, 12 letters. One catastrophic mistake. I miss you so much it hurts sometimes. Daniel Carter's finger hovered over the send button for only a heartbeat before tapping it, releasing those words into the digital void. But in that fraction of a second between sending and realizing, his entire world tilted. The message wasn't delivered to his late wife, Sarah's dormant number, as he'd intended on this lonely Friday night. It had gone to Evelyn Morris, his boss. If you believe stories like this still matter, if you believe love, healing, and second chances deserve to be heard, then please like this video and subscribe to Dad and Fate. Your support helps these stories reach the hearts that need them most. Time seemed to fracture as Daniel stared at the confirmation, his pulse thundering in his ears. 2 years of carefully maintained professionalism, 2 years of keeping his grief compartmentalized behind office walls, shattered by a single misdirected text. His fingers trembled as he began typing an explanation, an apology, anything to undo what couldn't be undone. Then he saw them, 3 gray dots pulsing on the screen. Evelyn was typing back. Daniel threw the phone onto the couch as though it had scalded him, burying his face in his hands. At 36, he'd become fluent in the language of loss. Sarah had collapsed without warning 2 years ago, an aneurysm stealing her away before he could say goodbye. She left behind a crater in his life and a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie, who still asked when Mommy was coming home. He'd learned to navigate the darkness, to function through the fog, to smile when Sophie needed him to smile. But tonight had been different. Tonight had carved him open all over again. The school talent show. Rows of mothers adjusting costumes, braiding hair, whispering encouragement. Sophie had stood alone backstage, her small hands clutching the sequin dress Daniel had tried his best to help her into. He'd seen her watching the other girls with their mothers, seen something break behind her eyes. She'd performed beautifully, his brave girl, but when they returned home, she'd crumpled. She'd cried herself to sleep, clutching Sarah's photograph, and Daniel had felt that familiar, suffocating helplessness that came with being unable to fix what was irretrievably broken. That's when he'd reached for his phone, seeking the only solace he knew. For 2 years, Daniel had texted Sarah's number on the hardest nights. He knew no one would read them. He knew it was a conversation with ghosts, but it helped. It made the emptiness feel less absolute. Except tonight, exhausted and hollowed out, he'd scrolled too far in his contacts. He'd tapped the wrong name. The phone chimed once, twice. Daniel couldn't bring himself to look. He worked at Morris Creative Solutions, where Evelyn Morris had built a formidable reputation as both a brilliant strategist and an exacting leader. She was early 40s, always immaculately professional, with an aura of controlled intensity that made junior employees nervous. She'd been understanding about Daniel's situation as a single father, granting him flexible hours when Sophie needed him. But their relationship was strictly professional. They weren't friends. They certainly weren't confidants. Finally, Daniel forced himself to read her messages. Daniel, is everything all right? I'm concerned. This doesn't seem like you. Can we talk? He typed quickly, fingers clumsy with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. That message wasn't intended for you. Please disregard it. See you Monday. Her response appeared almost immediately. Who was it meant for? Daniel hesitated, trapped between honesty and humiliation. Finally, he typed the truth. My wife's old number. I still text it sometimes. Tonight was difficult with Sophie. Again, my sincere apologies for the mistake. The 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. At last, her reply came through. No need to apologize. Get some rest, Daniel. He exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. Crisis averted. Evelyn Morris was nothing if not discreet. By Monday, this would be forgotten, relegated to the category of minor workplace awkwardness. But at 10:30 the following morning, his doorbell rang. Daniel opened the door with Sophie's half-finished science project scattered across the table behind him, expecting a delivery or perhaps a neighbor. Instead, he found Evelyn Morris standing on his porch. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater instead of her usual tailored suits. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders rather than pulled back in its signature, severe twist. She looked younger somehow, more human. Evelyn, Daniel stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. I brought coffee, she said, holding up a carrier containing 2 cups and a hot chocolate. Her eyes shifted to Sophie, who had appeared curiously behind her father. And I thought you might be working on something that could use an extra pair of hands. Before Daniel could respond, Sophie spoke up. Are you Daddy's boss? The one who makes him work late sometimes? Something softened in Evelyn's expression as she knelt to Sophie's eye level. I am, and I apologize for that. Maybe I can help with whatever you're building to make up for it. Sophie's face illuminated. We're making the solar system. Daddy's really bad at Saturn's rings. Well, Evelyn said with a conspiratorial smile, Saturn's rings happen to be my specialty. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his reality refusing to align with what was unfolding. Evelyn Morris, the woman whose mere presence could silence a boardroom, who maintained impenetrable boundaries between her professional and personal life, was walking into his home on a Saturday morning, offering to help his daughter with a school project. You really don't need to do this, he managed as Sophie dragged Evelyn toward the disaster zone that was their kitchen table. Evelyn paused, turning to face him fully. I know, she said simply, then lowering her voice so only he could hear. But everyone needs someone sometimes, Daniel, even if it's just to fix Saturn's rings. For the next 2 hours, Daniel watched as his intimidating boss transformed. She was patient with Sophie's questions, funny in a way he'd never witnessed at work, and surprisingly knowledgeable about astronomy. Sophie was captivated, hanging on every word. When the solar system sat complete and drying on the counter, Evelyn accepted Daniel's offer of lunch with an ease that felt strangely natural. Over sandwiches, Sophie chattered about school, her friends, and eventually, inevitably, about missing her mother. The kitchen grew quiet. Then Evelyn spoke. My mother died when I was 9, she said, the words landing softly in the silence. It was just my father and me after that. Sophie's eyes widened. Like me and Daddy. Just like you and your dad. Did you forget what she looked like? Sophie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn's expression gentled. No, sweetheart, I never forgot. And you won't either. After lunch, Sophie asked to show Evelyn her rock collection, leaving Daniel alone in the kitchen, hands submerged in dishwater, trying to make sense of this surreal day. When Evelyn returned, she leaned against the counter beside him. She's remarkable, Evelyn said quietly. She is, Daniel agreed. Thank you for today. You didn't have to come. Evelyn was silent for a long moment. When I received your text last night, it resonated with me. I understand what it's like to miss someone so intensely it becomes physical, to feel alone in rooms full of people. Daniel turned to look at her properly, seeing her not as his employer, but as a person carrying her own invisible weight. After my husband died 5 years ago, Evelyn continued, her voice steady but soft, I poured everything into work, built the agency into what it is today. But sometimes I still reach for my phone to tell him something, or turn to his side of the bed before remembering he's gone. I had no idea, Daniel said. I don't discuss it. Especially at work, I have a reputation to maintain. She smiled slightly. The Ice Queen of Morris Creative has a heart after all. Don't spread that around, she warned, though her eyes held warmth. When Sophie bounded back into the kitchen, she had a proposition. Can Evelyn come to the park with us? We always go to the park on Saturdays. Daniel looked at Evelyn apologetically. You've already sacrificed your entire morning. I'd love to, Evelyn interrupted, if that's acceptable to your father. The afternoon at the park overflowed with more genuine laughter than Daniel had experienced in months. Evelyn pushed Sophie on the swings, raced her down the slides, helped construct an elaborate sandcastle. Daniel found himself watching them, a strange warmth unfurling in his chest. Something he'd thought had died with Sarah. As the sun descended, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, they walked back to Daniel's house. Sophie skipped ahead, clutching an ice cream cone Evelyn had insisted on buying. She's going to crash spectacularly tonight, Daniel observed. Worth it, Evelyn replied. Days like this are what she'll remember. At the house, Sophie threw her arms around Evelyn's waist. Will you come back tomorrow? Evelyn glanced at Daniel, who could only shrug helplessly. That's very sweet, but I don't want to intrude on family time." "But you could be family too," Sophie said with a child's devastating logic. "Daddy needs friends. He's lonely." Heat crept up Daniel's neck. After Sophie reluctantly went inside, he turned to Evelyn on the porch. "I apologize for that. Children and their complete lack of filters." "Don't apologize. She's right. Everyone needs people." Evelyn hesitated, including me. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and honest. "Thank you for today," Daniel said finally. It meant everything to Sophie, and to me. Evelyn nodded, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She scribbled something on the back and handed it to him. "My personal number, in case you ever want to text the right person instead." As she turned to leave, Daniel called after her. "Evelyn, what made you come here today?" She paused at the bottom of the steps, looking back. "When I got your text, I realized something. We've all experienced loss, Daniel. Some of us just hide it more effectively than others." She smiled softly. "And sometimes the universe delivers exactly what we need, even if it arrives as a misdirected text message." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Daniel sat on his couch, staring at Evelyn's card. Before he could overthink it, he typed a message to her personal number. "Thank you for today. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about you. I haven't seen her this happy in a long time." The response came quickly. "I haven't been this happy in a long time either." Daniel smiled, feeling something shift inside him. A door opening that had been locked for too long. Over the following weeks, something unexpected bloomed between them. Evelyn joined them for Sunday dinners, helped Sophie with homework, introduced them to her rescue dog. At work, they maintained professionalism, though Daniel occasionally caught her smiling at him across conference rooms in a way that made his heart skip. 3 months after the misdirected text, Daniel invited Evelyn to dinner, just the two of them. Over wine and pasta, they talked for hours about their lost spouses, their grief, their fears about moving forward. "I'm scared," Daniel admitted. "Not just of starting something new, but of what Sarah would think." Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. "From everything you've told me about her, I think she'd want you and Sophie to be happy." "What about you?" Daniel asked. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Evelyn admitted. "I built walls after losing David. Work was easier than facing the emptiness. But then you accidentally texted me, and something told me I needed to show up at your door." "I'm glad you did," Daniel said softly. Standing on his porch that night, the air between them charged with possibility, Evelyn leaned close and whispered in his ear, "Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a mistake." Then she kissed him, and Daniel felt something he thought he'd never feel again. Hope. 1 year later, as Daniel watched Evelyn walk toward him down a flower-lined aisle, Sophie standing proudly as their flower girl, he marveled at how a single mistaken text had transformed everything. During their vows, Evelyn looked into his eyes and said, "Some people spend their entire lives searching for their person. I found mine through a text message that wasn't even meant for me." At the reception, Daniel's mother-in-law raised her glass. To Sarah, who would be so happy to see this family surrounded by joy, and to Evelyn, who had the courage to show up and help heal 2 broken hearts. Later, as they swayed together for their first dance, Evelyn whispered, "I'm so glad you texted the wrong person that night." Daniel pulled back to look into her eyes. "Actually," he said with a smile, "I think I texted exactly the right person, because sometimes life doesn't follow our plans. Sometimes we lose people we can't imagine living without. Sometimes we send messages to the wrong person, but sometimes those mistakes become the universe's way of guiding us exactly where we need to be."